A delightful morning on Ibn Island, a small island in the Pacific Ocean. A couple named Russell and Amy were busy harvesting coconuts from the trees when suddenly they heard the cry of a man from the shore. They quickly rushed towards the shore and saw a thin and exhausted man lying on the beach, stretching out his hand towards them, seeking help. Ibn Atoll is part of the Marshall Islands, considered to be one of the toughest and most remote places on Earth to reach. It's so remote that after World War II, America tested its atomic bombs there. Living in a place like Ibn Atoll, you must know that isn't a tourist destination and unexpected visitors are very rare. That's why this was a strange and significant discovery for Russell and Amy. At first, they thought this stranger had fallen from the passing cargo ship, but what they later found that was much stranger. The problem was that the man only spoke Spanish, and Russell and Amy had no common language with him. They went by boat to the nearest town to seek help, and over the next few days, this strange man began to tell his story. A man named Salvador Alvarenga. He said that on November 17, 2012, while fishing off the coast of Chiapas, Mexico, he got caught in a storm and was lost in the middle of the ocean. From that time until now, in a 23-foot boat he had been adrift at sea. Given that it was early 2014, if Alvarenga was telling the truth, it meant he had been lost at sea for 438 days. Surviving without water and food, facing storms and harsh conditions seemed unbelievable. That's why initially nobody believed Alvarenga's words, and most people who heard his story became a spectacle. Salvador had accepted answers to every question asked of him, yet most remained incredulous because what he said seemed impossible. This story gradually spread on social media and captured the attention of journalists who constantly questioned him. The city authorities doubting him subjected Salvador to a lie detector test and asked military and non-military experts to review his story in detail. Even an oceanographer used computer simulation on the Pacific Ocean to find the most probable route a boat could have taken from the shores of Mexico to his supposed location, trying to pinpoint the possible location Salvador had passed. But in the end, nobody could discredit Salvador's unbelievable story. After some time, survival experts supported Salvador's tales of overcoming the challenges of the sea and keeping himself alive under those harsh conditions. Many adventurers confirmed that Salvador's experience resonated with their own. Eventually, someone managed to find Salvador's contact number in Mexico and called him, confirming that there was indeed an employee named Salvador Alvarenga who disappeared on November 17, 2012 with a boat matching a specification of the one thrown ashore on the island after a severe storm in the ocean. In summary, by piecing together all the puzzle pieces, the world's media was forced to publish the most incredible survival story ever told. Slowly, they came to believe that Salvador Alvarenga was telling the truth. Now, let's go back to 14 months ago, on November 18, 2012, when Salvador decided to embark on his 2-day fishing trip. That day was like any other for him, and he had no idea that when he stepped onto the dock and boarded his boat, he was destined to spend over a year on it. The only regret he had at that moment was that his old fishing partner, who always accompanied him, couldn't make it, meaning Salvador had to find a replacement, and that person was Ezequiel Cordoba, at 23 years old. These two men had never worked together before and didn't know each other well, but they soon found plenty of time to get acquainted. Their journey started off well and they managed to catch plenty of fish. However, a storm rose accompanied by thunder, lightning, and strong winds and high waves in the sea. To lighten the boats, they threw all the fish they had caught into the sea to prevent it from sinking. The storm lasted for 5 days, and the relentless waves caused damage to the boat's engine and all the electronic equipment they had. The most crucial tools were the GPS devices and the two-way radio, both of which were out of order. Before the radio malfunctioned, Salvador had managed to make an emergency call to his boss on the shore, but without GPS they couldn't track the boat's position, rendering the call useless. After the rescue operation began, they couldn't locate the small boat amidst the waves without a sail and without any lights. They seemed to have vanished between the waves. Eventually, after 2 days of searching, the rescue operation was halted and everyone concluded that the two men had drowned in the ocean. Back on the boat, Alvarenga and Cordoba had survived the storm, but after enduring 5 exhausting days and struggling to survive, they were very tired and their bodies smelled of fish. They didn't know where they were, and wherever they looked, they only saw the sea. They soon realized that nobody was coming to rescue them anymore, and a great fear gripped their hearts. They had thrown all their food into the sea, and only a very small amount of water remained for them. Their fishing gear had been swallowed by the waves. The GPS was out of order, and the boat's engine was damaged. But their biggest concern was running out of drinking water. A human can miraculously survive several days without food, but living without water for an extended period is impossible. Alvarenga and Cordoba began collecting rainwater using a bucket that had survived the storm. Over time, they added more containers, including plastic bottles floating in the ocean, to gather rainwater. This way, they stored more drinkable water for themselves. With fishing gear lost and days of hunger, they grew desperate and weakened. It was precisely in this moment that Alvarenga showed creativity, devising a new method for fishing without any tools. He would hang from the boat, submerge his hands into the water, and stare into the depths, waiting to grab anything he spotted. He persisted in this until he caught one, swiftly tossing it into the boat once captured. They gradually expanded their diet to include other creatures, resorting to seabirds or turtles on days when fishing was unsuccessful. When rain was scarce and their water supply dwindled, they resorted to drinking bird blood. It wasn't easy, but it beat dying of thirst. Additionally, the meat of these animals provided vitamin C, which became a crucial part of their diet. After a while, they decided to spread the meat of the birds and fish they caught on the metal hull of the boat during the day, hoping it would cool in the sun. However, this method didn't work, forcing them to continue eating raw meat. This led to a significant problem when Cordoba fell severely ill after eating a seabird. Quickly, they discovered the cause: a half-eaten poisonous snake inside the bear's stomach. While Cordoba survived the incident, he was never the same. He couldn't stomach raw meat anymore and felt nauseous with everything he ate. This led to him refusing food, and his body grew weaker day by day until, sadly, he passed away after 4 months into their journey. Alvarenga was deeply saddened by this loss. As the two had grown close during their journey, he was forced to continue alone, losing not only his close friend but also his connection to humanity. Over the past 4 months, they had struggled together against death, battling various elements such as storms, massive waves, hunger, and dehydration. But with Cordoba's death, Alvarenga faced an even deadlier foe: complete isolation. Being alone in such harrowing conditions was terrifying for him at first. Unable to come to terms with it, he kept Cordoba's body in the boat, speaking to his young friend as if he were still alive. He conversed with the corpse for 6 full days until he slowly began losing his sanity. Before this event, the two had agreed that if one of them died, the other would not eat their flesh, but would instead cast their body into the sea. Therefore, Alvarenga spoke a few final words to his friends and bid him a calm farewell before tossing his body into the ocean. However, the ocean aren't entirely empty, and Alvarenga spotted many ships in the distance waving to them, but unfortunately he and his small boat were lost amidst the endless waves. Eventually, no one noticed him. It's impossible to comprehend what he faced in those 14 months and the dangers he endured. In an age where people can't even spend 5 minutes alone without their phones, Salvador Alvarenga spent 10 months alone in his tiny boat without any means. Despite the hardship and risk, against all odds, he didn't lose hope and fought to survive. Morning, a strange noise woke him from his sleep. The sound of a flock of birds, different kinds. As he opened his eyes, he saw them circling in the sky before him. Alvarenga quickly got up and looked around, seeing something that was incredibly hard for him to believe: an island a few miles away. Overwhelmed with joy, he dove into the water and swam to the shore. Moments later, the waves brought him to the beach. Just as everything had gone right for him until that day, after 14 months of wandering the ocean, Alvarenga was led to Ibn Atoll shore, and after months, luck was on his side again. Reaching the shore, he fell to the ground and dug his toes into the sand, feeling the ground beneath his feet for the first time in what seemed like ages. Ibn Atoll is a right circle formed by 22 distinct islands, and the one he had arrived at was Tile Island, barely larger than a football field. Usually uninhabited save for the occasional tourists or locals seeking a secluded spot to bask in the sun. It was his stroke of luck that Russell and Amy were busy harvesting coconuts from the trees when they heard his cries, completing our story. Of course, calling Ibn Atoll fortunate may sound absurd, but it's worth noting that if his trajectory had been just a few miles north or south, he would have missed this island entirely without even knowing they exist, requiring him to traverse over 3,000 miles to reach the Philippines, with his likely next stop being there, provided he survived until then. Summarizing a tale like Alvarenga's is challenging. It's one of those things the human brain struggles to comprehend. Ultimately, Salvador Alvarenga was rescued after spending 438 days at sea. His story turning into one of the most remarkable journeys and feats of survival. It's a story filled with pain and suffering, overcoming despair in the depths of loneliness and resilience that few humans have ever been able to endure.